So hello, and in today's video I'm going to show you the top 10 most exciting Ark teams, so let's just get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got the Carno, and when this thing was first released, obviously with the initial game, I saw our Ballistic Squid series, and obviously he got a Carno called Carny Dave, and when I got my first Carno I was so excited, and I still love using the Carno to this day. Well, mostly for nostalgia reasons, I do think the Carno does have some good advantages, and I think it is a very exciting creature overall. While people may prefer the Aloe for its bleed ability and pack abilities, the Carno can still deal bleed damage as well, and I do like the small form factor that the Carno gives too. They're also ridiculously easy to tame as well, especially on ASA with the baby Carnos, and then you can just kill the parent and then get the baby Carnos that way. But since they're TLC and they've got the extra bleed ability, I think the Carnos are still pretty useful, especially for PvE. I can see no use in PvP use for the Carno, of course, but for PvE stuff, I think the Carno is still an incredibly useful dino, and for that reason, I think it's exciting, and obviously it's just exciting for me. It's an excitable creature, it's got some great abilities, it is of a good size where I think people enjoy it, and you know, it deals good damage, and for that I think it is an exciting Ark team. Next up we got the Volosaur, and my reasons for this is just because of how cool this creature looks and the abilities that are offered by this creature. It's absolutely insane, like that this is a creature that shoots spines out. It's essentially a living turret. There's no other creature like it in the Ark universe really, and just patrolling on extinction here, like there's nothing that beats it. On an ASA they're still absolutely amazing, and with all the new graphical fidelity as well, it's great. And you can just see me shooting into that theory there. Well, potentially a little bit creepy at times with some of the abilities, and you'll see that in a second. I just love the abilities of this thing, and still love the abilities that come from the Volosaur, and that's why I think it's so exciting. I loved it at release, and I still love it now. You've obviously got the R Volosaurs on Gen 2 as well, and they are great offerings on top of the base Volosaur being an even stronger OP version of the original. They do great damage, they work great as turrets, and they do scale with melee as long as you're riding them. Sadly, if you're not riding them, they don't work, but I never use these things as base defense. I'm always going out with them, and they're absolutely amazing for it. Coming out next, we have got the Mantis, and what a creature this is, really, in my opinion. The Mantis is one of those where it's like, oh my god, I love the abilities that are offered by this thing. The fact that it can hold two weapons and you can use them around and just hack and slash anything, or use it for mining and utility, is such a great concept to me, and that's why I put them on this list. Again, there is no other creature like it when it comes to the Mantis, and while yes, the durability is less on these weapons than what it would be if you just shoot it yourself, you're on this fast crazy Mantis that's swinging these things around, and you can see how much damage it's doing to that Diplo there, so it's by no means ineffective. Pikes are personally my choice of weaponry rather than swords on this thing, but I decided to demonstrate with swords because why the heck not, really. Swords just look the part, I guess, more than pikes, but usually a good ascendant pike, it will do wonders with a Mantis, and obviously you can harvest with an ascendant pick or an ascendant hatchet. They're great for my metal gathering as well, while I can just use an Anki. Sometimes I like to go up with the Mantis because I just think they're fun and cool to use. I'm not being 100% practical when I do that with a Mantis, but I still think they're great for it. So for the utility and the ability, they have to be here. At number 7, we have got the Rhino, and this is one of those where, although be it a new creature, I still think it was exciting around its release, and although I didn't particularly like it around that time, it's definitely grown on me, and although it's very nerfed in ASA, I still think it does wonders for me. So I really do like the Rhino, and it's still an exciting creature to me. While its tame method is a bit of a rip-off of the Reaper, frankly, they're still rare enough that, you know, there's an element of excitement in their taming method, I think. And obviously you have to kill a male one first, so there's some extra steps involved, and you have to sacrifice the creature on top of it. There's a lot of preparation work that you need to do, and also it's made the swamps an even worse place to be in. As you've got this thing chasing you in the swamps, you're absolutely done for, and it's an already hated biome, let's say. But once you've got one, they are very fast travel mounts that can pick up Rexes and all kinds of creatures like that, which is just such an exciting concept in itself. Usually you just have to cryo those things, and you just, whatever the biggest thing you could pick up on a Quetzal was what you could get around with, like Stegos, and I think you can do Mammoths with a Quetzal as well, but not Rexes and Parasauritheriums like you can do on a Rhinognatha. And while using all the taming foods, I think, is a bit rubbish for getting 100%, because I don't use these things for combat particularly. I don't do that personally. With the aid of a net gun, they're not too difficult to tame, and they're great for just flying around and transporting stuff around, and they've got such novelty to them that I think that's what gives them the excitement to put them on the list for me. Next up, we have got the Crystal Wyvern, and the reason why this excited me so much at release is it's essentially just a Wyvern, but easier to tame, and in my opinion, with cooler abilities. Fire Wyverns are great and all, with all the other options that you get on Ragnarok and Scorched Earth, but these added some new concepts which you wouldn't usually associate with dragon type creatures. You could have this tropical one, which is being shown here, and my personal favorite, the Blood Crystal Wyvern, which could suck the blood of its enemies, a bit like what the Desmodus does, although without some of the utility offered there. And, you know, they were just added so much sort of versatility to the Wyvern, let's say, and they came at a much cheaper cost, and they would passive around the place as well. I think these are a great take even on the Wyvern, and they have all the same abilities offered. While there is a level cap on when you can actually start taming these things, I still think a quick Explorer run does wonders, and you can tame it in your first session or two if you're on Crystal Isles, and they really do wonders, especially the Blood Crystal Wyvern being my favorite there. The abilities are so cool that they offer, and, you know, it's a Wyvern. What's not to love, really? Coming in at number 5, we have got the Shadow Mane, and this is one of those tames where it's like, oh my gosh, like going back to Genesis Part 2 and seeing this thing getting released again would be something which I'd probably do, because seeing this thing for the first time was so cool. It's essentially the Thyla on steroids, in my opinion, and while at launch it was more OP than it is now, and I imagine when Genesis Part 2 releases on ASA, the same will go there, and it will be nerfed perhaps even more, but it's still such a cool concept, and its mobility is insane, so I have to love it for that. Just look at how high this thing is jumping, okay? What's not exciting about that? And of course, it's got so much practical use. It has the hydration buff, and they can like scale up their damage and deal even more. They generally look cool. While the taming method is by no means exciting and is just really annoying, I still think everything else about them makes them great and so exciting as a creature concept and as a creature. Now, the Bloodstalker is one of those where I think potentially it's a bit underrated for what I would rate it at, because I personally love the Bloodstalker and use it for all of my underwater travels. I think it is a great creature for traversing underwater regions of the map, and, you know, generally I think it's got a really cool, exciting design. I personally like spiders myself, and so get along with the Bloodstalker's design very well, and I think its taming method is cool, obviously the same as the Desmodus's, or rather the Desmodus's is the same as the Bloodstalker's, and I think it works effectively for what it does, and it's exciting because you're basically like Spider-Man but in Ark, and its underwater speed versatility just makes it so great for me. And while I'm not showing the best example of it here in the B-roll, it is still a creature which, you know, when used perhaps a little bit more effectively, this B-roll was done a little while ago and on a map which doesn't really suit the Bloodstalker. If you get a map that suits it, or if you're just in the underwater regions, it's an absolute breeze to use, and its abilities are great as well, like sucking the life and some other creatures nearby. Personally, I would like to see the blood bag farming capabilities of the Desmodus on the Bloodstalker as well. That would really make sense to me, But apart from that, it is such a cool and exciting creature, and if you haven't given it a go before, please do, because it is 100% worth it. Coming in at number 3, we have got the Maywing, and what's not to love about a flying, or rather gliding platypus that travels basically at the speed of light. This thing is an insanely quick travel mount, and considering its saddle was unlocked so early on, and its tame can simply be done with some trank arrows and a few signs, this can be had in your first hour of Ark easily, and even first half an hour, especially considering how cheap the saddle is on top of this too. I think it's unlocked like at level 18 or level 19. It's absolutely insane with a creature like this. The Maywing is the pinnacle of travel in my opinion, and while maybe not the best for a map like Aberration, and where there's a lot of incline sections, it works great in every other scenario, especially in the declines, obviously, because, you know, it's a glider rather than a flyer. And it does have uses as a feeding trough as well for you people who like to breed dinos out there, and myself included with that. But the main excitement comes from the ease of travel and the fact that it can be unlocked so early on. It can also gather berries as well, which is a great ability on top of it, but that's not the main reason for my excitement for it. In at number 2, we have got the Reaper, and this personally is a favorite of mine just because of the taming method. It was so cool at the time, and I think personally what's not to love about the xenomorph style taming method that comes from the Reaper. It's so fitting to the xenomorph that it is, obviously, and while the Reaper Queen, which I'm actually showing here rather than the Reaper King, which is the only thing you can actually tame, does lack a great ability which the Reaper Queen has in its tail ability, I still think they are both great creatures, and the excitement of taming one for the first time and the massive process on Ab was simply nothing that can be replicated with basically any other Ark creature. It was so exciting to get your first one, and you do anything not to lose it. On Ab, there was all this process of getting out of the depths as well, and that whole impregnation stage too. There's so much to it, mainly in the taming and obtaining and getting this thing process, but once you had it, you felt like an absolute god, and you felt like nothing could really face you, and it is truly like such an exciting Ark tame. And in at number 1, you probably expect it, it is the Donicus, the absolute pinnacle of Ark creatures for me, obviously on Valguero. Can't wait for this thing to come to ASA. This is just such a great Ark creature for me. It is packed full of abilities I love. Firstly, its taming method is great. You can get this thing up quickly just by finding a nest and getting some torches out and raising this thing up, but also it can grip on to large creatures, absolutely tear them to shreds with the bleed ability, and it's great on bosses too, because of course it works on bosses. And once you've got the pack buff as well, you are absolutely flying in the damage department. It's insane what you can do with one of these things, and truly, oh my god, they are fantastic, especially with the speed and the agility which they've got. And of course, they don't take full damage too. While their climbing is a little bit finicky, especially compared to something like the Thyla, once gotten used to, it really isn't too much of a problem at all. They are great climbers and can traverse basically any environment which you'd want them to, apart from underwater areas, but you're not really using them for that. Their speed and agility across the mainland is simply unmatched, especially with their damage dealing capabilities and their insane boss fighting skills. So nothing really gets better than the Dine for me when it comes to exciting Ark creatures, and perhaps you feel the same, but of course you can always leave your comments down below. In at number 10, we have the Challicatherum, and in my opinion, this creature really does have to just make this list, because like when you look at it and its taming method and kind of how useful this creature is, but also how much more useful this creature could be if it did get a TLC, it really makes me feel like this creature is in dire need of one. Maybe a slight change in the taming method would be sufficient. Maybe don't make it just a normal knockout tame, but maybe have some kind of different feeding material for a passive tame to make it more accessible to actually tame, because getting that beer is certainly something, but you know, maybe that it gives the creature some sort of character to just its general identity. So maybe that won't go ahead, and that's fine. But if it has just
some general quality of life improvements. And actually for me it is mainly the tame method when coming back to it. If I added more accessible tame methods, if its rocks maybe did some more damage and were slightly more aimable, that's probably just my part, that could be useful. And maybe if it had some maybe like an extra special ability or something like that, it could really bring this creature together. And I'm actually keen to hear what you think your ideas should be for these creatures and what TLCs they should actually get. Next up, we have got the Basilisk, and I feel like this is such a cool creature when you think of it, but when you actually maybe use it in practice, it doesn't really hype up to everything. And partly I think it should have some better mobility overall, maybe some extra abilities on top of what it already has, maybe allow it to deal more damage. I think the tame method is fine, it makes sense. It's a little bit irritating, but considering what kind of creature this is, you would probably expect that. I'm fine with it. If they did want to change it in future with a TLC, that'd be fine, but that's not usually what TLCs are about. It would be adding some extra special abilities and like more maybe utilizing that underground ability even further, and maybe like an ability to send shockwaves and knock back creatures under the ground and like leap up under them and just demolish them. You could definitely use some really cool features with that as well, which aren't currently in the game. Now, next up, we've got the Giga, and I feel like it's a time at this point where this creature needs some sort of TLC, and maybe it's not in the most dire need, but I really feel like compared to the Challicatherum and other creatures like that, it's very far behind in just what this creature is and what its abilities are like. And yeah, I know it's a lot easier to tame than a Challicatherum in most cases. It's in some ways a lot more resource intensive because you need all of those trank arrows, but it's not as laborious of a method and less things can kind of go wrong in the taming of this thing. But I still think it's quite dated in how it works as a creature compared to something like Challicatherum. I'm not saying like make it exactly like that creature, but maybe if it had the stats of like a wild Giga, maybe you'd still keep that rage buff if necessary. Otherwise, remove that, as you know it's quite a big hindrance, and the Challicatherum doesn't have that. And I know I'm relating it a lot to that creature, but Ark is a different game now than what it was in 2016, so this creature, it has a lot of dated things about it, which is why I'm putting it on this list. I'm not saying like maybe it's in the most dire need of TLC, but I really do think wildcard should give the Giga at some point a reconsider over, because it's such an influential Ark tame, and I think it deserves something. In at number 7, we have got the carb enemies, and I put this thing here as I think it could be a really useful starter tame. It kind of already is, but it could be even better if it had just a little TLC, and maybe increase its movement a little bit, give it some special abilities, possibly some kind of spinning attack that could stun some enemies underwater, maybe give it some better gathering features, possibly something like that. You could even maybe give it the pack buff in a pack. I know it's not really the most useful thing. Again, very keen to hear your ideas on what TLCs you think these creatures should get, and what actually other creatures which I haven't put on this list, which you think you need TLC should actually have. Personally, for me, if it had some kind of special attack on top of it, its saddle is fine. Not like yeah, the cementing pace is a little bit of a hindrance. You could make that a little bit cheaper, but it kind of makes sense. It is a good underwater creature. I'd say maybe boost its speed a little bit, add maybe more of an essence of damage, maybe make these things better turret soakers. There are just so many good opportunities with this creature, which I think wildcard kind of misses out on, and I feel like it could be a really high step of a level over where the Parasol was. And the Stego is such a different creature now to what it was before it had that TLC, and if the carb enemies could go under similar treatment, maybe if not as OP as the Stego, it could be a really useful thing for the carb enemies to have. And I personally think it's quite underrated and people don't give it enough credit, and if it had that TLC, then maybe it would bring this creature to some new heights. Next up, we've got the Angler, the king of harvesting any kind of silica pearls. But personally, I think it can be used and remembered for a lot more than that. It can be just a really great, agile, maybe higher damage dealing creature with some other wealth of abilities, and maybe it could do something with obviously the main thing that defines an anglerfish, which is the light on the front of it, and it could possibly do something. But I'm not actually sure how much it illuminates, but if it would be kind of useful if you could really use it to illuminate your way in the night, that would be quite nice. If it had some kind of basic saddle and armor, that would boost it up another level, and some more special abilities, because all it can really do is attack and just gather some silica pearls. And I feel like you can be really inventive with this creature and its design. Although yes, maybe it's not the most dinosaur-like creature, I still think there's a lot that can be done to this creature to improve it in everything that it stands for, instead of just being a good silica pearl gatherer and just your generic basic ocean tame. At number 5, we got the Pachy, and this creature really just has to be here for me on this list. And it's kind of sad looking at this because it's so useless, but with just a few simple changes it could be a much better creature. Firstly, if it could gather berries, that would put this thing at significantly better heights for general use. Also, I think the mobility of this creature is fine. Its special attack could be utilized in a better fashion if you had more mobility when it was actually charging, because it's not particularly OP. If it dealt a little bit more torpor, that could be nice. If its taming method wasn't so long and laborious, that would make this creature a more defined, useful one. And if it had some maybe special harvesting abilities, or some kind of buff it gave other creatures, or something small like that, like a buff and obviously the ability to gather berries and just a tame method that isn't as difficult, then it could really boost this creature in terms of its abilities and where it actually is in the game, because you can just get a Parasaur and that creature is going to do so much more good. And it took absolutely ages to kill this raptor. Personally, I do think these things should deal a little bit more damage just to the general creatures, possibly because they are quite heavily armored creatures. It would make sense. Next up, we've got the Archopterics, but I'm also going to put the Galley in a similar spot as well, as I think the Galley is just lacking in the health department and a bit of damage as well, although it doesn't really need that, and some weight definitely that could drastically improve that creature. And again, maybe a special ability of sorts, maybe like an extra dash. But talking about the Archopterics, since the glide suit came out, and the cinema crops after that as well, this creature is pretty much just useless, and it's just an old version of those two things. If you could use this thing like a cinema crops though, and as sort of an alternative to that creature on other maps, as the cinema crops isn't on every map, then it could really boost this creature. It could just be a better use of a creature. You can still use it like a hang glider, but then you wouldn't have to carry it. It could just go on your back normally. And yeah, there's a few things that you can do with this creature which can turn it from something completely useless to something like the cinema crops. At number 3, we've got the Megalosceros, and the female version, of course, not the male one. That's a good thatch gatherer. Personally, I think, yeah, maybe this is only really used for breeding just Megaloceroses, but you could at least do something with this creature. It can't even attack. It has no attack whatsoever. This is in dire need of some sort of TLC to actually be a useful creature, apart from that one use, which isn't even really utilizing this creature. It's just essentially using it as a placeholder to make baby Megaloceroses, and then if you get female babies out of that, it's not good. You only want the male babies out of it to get good thatch gatherers and whatever you use general male Megaloceroses for. The female one is just, yeah, maybe it doesn't have all the horns and all of that, but I still think it should have some sort of edge, which would be like, why you tame this creature apart from just, oh, I want to breed some Megaloceroses, so I'm going to get both of these. And I know generally most Ark creatures don't have distinction between both genders of creatures, and considering this one does, I feel like Wildcard could do something with this creature to really highlight those differences, and you'd have different uses for both instead of this one just being like utterly useless and obsolete. Next up, we've got the Microaptor, and the reason why I'm putting it so high on the list isn't necessarily because I think it needs the most amount of TLC, but I think its ability is quite a cool and interesting one, and if utilized properly, it could really make this a good sidekick. Again, if you just have this just like maybe on your back or on your shoulder, I think you can actually put this thing on your shoulder, but if you have it on your back like a Cinemacrops or another creature, I'm just trying to think there, I think the Seeker, whatever it's called, has that same sort of ability. Actually don't, I think that's in a mod, but still, if it had that, and then you could just send it on riders and then it would come back onto you, so you could knock people off their riders and then it would come back to your back. That could just be a really cool, simple ability for this creature to have. And in number 1 is the Arano, and there are so many things that you can do cool with spiders, and I'm kind of going to put the Onyx here as well, although maybe if you turn the Onyx into something more like the Desmodus, but maybe a slightly dumbed down version that was easier to tame, that could be very useful because that creature is pretty much obsolete. With this creature though, the Arano, if it had the ability to climb up walls, something simple like that, and it actually dealt some reasonable amount of damage and had some decent health and all things like that, then it wouldn't just be a sort of placeholder obsolete creature, which you would only tame if you wanted to tame every creature on Ark, and it's actually just a generally huge pain to tame this creature, so I'd recommend a slight change in that taming method. And if you could do that and make this sort of like the Bloodstalker but have some distinction, it could be a really great creature.
And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Macy, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.